great to have a great audience in front of us, and I've been interacting with the panelists. I think we've got a pretty exciting panel in front of us. The topic we're going to discuss is pretty close to my heart, so I lead the fintech practice within PwC. And maybe I'll start with a plug here, self-confess. So we did a survey recently. It was a global survey. We covered around 550 participants all over the world, including the incumbent banks as well as startups, to say how are they seeing the thing shaping up. One interesting fact was around 2/3 of the participants responded by saying that there is a very strong partnership happening between the banks and incumbents for varying reasons. The survey did cover reasons such as opening up innovation, tapping into untapped areas where the banks traditionally did not have focus, a lot of funding as well as innovation access which startups have which they can bring to banks, so on and so forth. And we will explore some of the themes in our conversation today. So I'll just go along my participant pool, and maybe we'll just have an introductory comment, and then followed up with we'll have some conversation around it. So Harjeet, shall I ask you to go first?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Harjeet. I am part of the RBL Bank team. I head the business on the lending side for the retail, MSME, and financial inclusion customers. These are exciting times for us. I think with the entire digitization of economy as we are seeing it, there is a tremendous opportunity today for a bank like us to kind of scale, and that too at a fraction of a cost. Today we are seeing a possibility to maybe target segments of customers which earlier was either unviable, both from a cost side or physically, which I think is possible today. We love working with fintechs. We, as a bank, believe in the philosophy of partnerships, and I think we believe that fintechs bring a lot to the table, which we can complement working with them, and therefore I look forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Thanks. Akash?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Akash Arora. I'm the co-founder of ePesa. And as a fintech startup, we basically work with banks like RBL and focus on enabling the small and medium-sized merchant and making their life easier. And there's a lot of traction, and there's a lot of opportunity in the disruption of the small merchant. And I'm thankful that I'm at this discussion. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Vishal. I'm the co-founder of UltraCash Technologies. We are a mobile payment system where we want to enable every merchant in this country to accept digital payment without the need of any hardware. And we want to enable every consumer in this country to be able to pay using their mobile phone. That's what our charter is. Banks are our biggest partners. We look up to banks to provide support to companies like us to be able to achieve our vision. And really excited to have this discussion with the participation from the banks.
Rohit?
I'm Rohit Gupta. So I'm CFO for NIIT Limited. NIIT is a global talent development company, and it offers learning management, training delivery solutions to corporates, institutions, and individuals over 40 countries. So in this fintech growth, as we see NIIT is well poised to help the banks and the financial institutions, to help them, have the right kind of talent, to skill development, and also competency enrichment, create a culture for innovation, a culture for digital, and also help them in getting the right technology integration between the business domain and the culture.
Thanks, Rohit. So just to kick it off, so there are areas which we call as the strike zones, which are where we are seeing a lot of innovation and action happen, right? So this could be in areas of alternate lending, in areas of robo-advice, in areas of payments, digital payments. It could also be capabilities like blockchain, right? Now, there are areas which, if you see from an overall market point of view, one would think there is competition happening between the incumbents and the fintech startups. But hearing all of you, there is also a strong area of collaboration. So Harjeet, maybe for you to kick off, coming from a bank point of view, what are the imperatives you have seen for this partnership?
Yeah, I think part of it is a culture issue. The fact that if as an organization you have a partnership culture, then you see your relationship with fintechs more as collaborative partners, then feel threatened around it. Having worked with a lot of them in recent times, there are some very clear things which fintechs bring to the table, which I think banks struggle with. One is they're extremely nimble, flexible, very focused on the solution they're trying to solve. And I think the biggest is the kind of consumer UI, UX which they build and make it so easy for consumers to be able to kind of operate them is clearly something which we as banking as an industry have been missing. So I think there is a lot which we can do through collaboration. Banks on the other side, I think, bring to the table, one, a balance sheet. The fact that if you're on the lending side, you need a banking or an NBFC as a partner to be able to do that. Second is risk management. We've been doing risk management for a long time, and therefore there is certain value which we bring to the table. And third, obviously, is providing a platform where we can give access to customers to be able to test models. So,
And what are the areas which you have seen it succeeding well? And those areas, do you see continuing as you move forward, or do you see newer areas of collaboration coming up?
So I think the initial startup kickoff was on the payment side, especially on the wallet side, where we did see a lot of work happening, and we have a lot of successful partnerships there as well. But the new area which I think has a lot of potential is on the lending side, to be able to use the data footprints which are being generated through all the digitization of the economy which is happening, and therefore build robust models to be able to penetrate segments, I think is the new area which is going to be.
Fantastic. And maybe Akash, Vishal, to bring you in the conversation. From a digital payment perspective, we know the challenges are in the acquisition side. We know the fact that we have 40 to 50 million merchant outlets out there. We just have around 1 million plus under coverage. So, A, what are your efforts in getting that inclusion happening? And B, what has been your personal experience of working with banks in this space? What has worked? Some stories around that, please.
Basically, our experience with the merchant has been that with all this noise in the digital payment space, it helps our business, and it helps the merchant to understand that digital payments are here to stay, which is good for the whole market as such. We have certain challenges which we face in terms of the black money aspect of it, and I think digital payments and the government is trying to get more and more serious in that space, which is good for us. In terms of banks, well, you know, there is less friction than it used to be. Things have become easier. Banks are now more open to talking to startups and changing things. But it really remains, you know, that they have some legacy systems and they have some legacy thoughts, which again, as Harjeet said, it's all about culture, right? If the bank has a culture to change, they will change. If the culture is to stay put, then you have to keep on convincing. So there's a story of a bank we've been dealing with for the last 3 years, and we have not got beyond speaking. There is no MOU, there is no, so, you know, and then there are banks which have taken a few weeks and have done everything. So there's a difference between the culture, there's a difference between how large you are, and there's also still security issues remain for a bank. That remains an internal challenge, and they don't. I mean, they don't open up that easily till they know who you are and so on and so forth. But I mean, our experience has been pretty open with the banks right now.
So let's look at the digital payments, right? Everybody in this country is talking about financial inclusion. Everybody is talking about how do we penetrate to the last person and ensure that we move towards a less cash economy. Whatever our experience has been in the last couple of years has been that all the stakeholders in this, whether it is the startups, technology providers, banks, financial institutions, regulatory, everybody is trying their best to achieve the same vision. All of us are providing our bit. Like, if I talk about UltraCash, we have created a world's first of its kind technology where we transfer data between two devices using high frequency sound. when we went to RBI, when we went to the regulators, when we went to NPCI, when we spoke with large banks, everybody was extremely receptive about it, saying this is phenomenal innovation and let's take things forward. So that means there is a huge shift in this country where there is a common goal saying let's crack it. In digital space, let's be the leaders. It's not that we'll be laggards here. We're going to change how people perceive India. So that's the whole philosophy. To give you some of the examples, we were extremely apprehensive because that's what you hear when you enter into banks, saying that banks move very slowly. They would like to buy you out rather than collaborating with you. We found those completely unfounded. Most of the banks have been extremely open in collaborating, where if you bring in value to the table and say, this is the innovation I bring in, and can we create a win-win situation for everybody, they're very open to doing anything. So much so that for the first time you'll see banks taking forward a consumer-facing startup to their customers, which was unheard of. Say, 5 years back, nobody would have even thought about it.
Yeah.
So that's the landscape which is changing now.
Very interesting. Both of you hinted at culture, so maybe I just want to bring Rohit into this conversation. Being a premier training and enablement organization, what's your view on culture change? What are the things which can work well in terms of impacting culture?
So I'll say a successful digital transformation is not about just adopting technology. It's also about an organization change, how they are taking all the new possibilities into account. Today, NIIT, I would say, offers, it's a leader in digital learning solutions, and we are offering a lot of products specifically on the futuristic technologies like, artificial intelligence, big data, Internet of Things, And also, we have a subsidiary, which is the Institute of Finance, Banking, and Insurance, which also helps in sourcing and training employees for the banks and financial. So it's important to have this, the skill set, the right skill set, which is technologically oriented and understands the whole dynamics of the business domain and technology. And therefore, I think this cultural issue is extremely important, and Harjeet mentioned it, and my other co-panelists also mentioned it. And I have seen the same thing. In adopting technology, it's important to really get from the top down itself. It has to come from top down saying, this is how we are going to digitalize ourselves, and this is how we are going to show the world that we are going to be digital. I'll take an example. One of the US companies has gone ahead and put their customer complaints on Twitter. Now, that's a bold move. You're letting every world know, the whole world know that you are actually, there's a customer complaint, and what is the time it's going to take to resolve that complaint. So that's how the future is today. If we are embracing technology, we also have to be responsive to the need of the customer. How quickly are we going to be able to, give solutions to them, and how quickly and how simply, how are we going to simplify their solutions to them?
Rohit, there's almost an element of unlearning here, right? So a lot of technology and business, it took a while for all the business to appreciate how a technology cycle works, and now we did the whole SDLC cycle saying you do requirements, this, and this. But if you talk to any of the startups, they work in a very agile fashion. Someone said nimble, right? Because their approach is different. So I almost hypothesize that there is a fair degree of unlearning which has to be done culturally. So how does one facilitate that? And maybe Harjeet, your experiences on how does one do that?
Yeah, so I think there is immense amount of unlearning, and therefore maybe sometimes it's a good idea to kind of pick out some people and say, okay, these guys are going to be the digital ambassadors in the company. The operating styles are very different, and it is not only in business which I see, I also see in technology. In banks, we are used to legacy systems. Anything which changes takes us about 3 to 6 months, whereas on the fintech world, anything which changes takes about a week to 10 days. They don't have the full solution in mind when they start, but they want to pick up small problems and go as their way. So it's a completely different way of working. And I think, yes, so therefore, you need to be able to begin with, maybe keep aside a separate team, which is more digitally inclined, both on the technology side and on the business side, to be able to run this. The other side, which is maybe not too learning led, but is the organization structure within the bank itself. And I don't know if there must be so many fintech people sitting here who would have experienced interacting with banks. You don't know who to interact. You have very siloed organizations, and therefore that also becomes a kind of a challenge.
Yeah, fair point. So probably to flip it on to Vishal and Akash, from your perspective, you had mixed experiences of working with the banks, right? So, and maybe I'll come back to Harj and take his views also on this. So from your perspective, what are those set of behaviors and enabling platforms or technologies, or to cut short the chase, I'm basically saying from your perspective, who do you think are good banks in terms of for you to work as a startup to work with? Because I'm sure when you started your journey, it was a startup ambition, right? So it was agile, nimble, so on and so forth. Now suddenly you're working with a behemoth. So in your case, from your experience, which are the good experiences and why? And what are the inhibitors that you see?
So I largely agree with Harjeet. The problems that he pointed out about large banks, it's primarily true. Having said that, what we have come across is there are thought leaders in each of these banks. And those are the guys who are driving the change. So if it's very difficult to put a bank as a single entity because it's largely driven by people who are driving those change. You can call it our good luck or whatever it is, we've been able to reach out to the right set of people who have been able to guide us at every step. Having said that, of course, there are processes which needs to be improved, right from the software release cycles to taking faster decisions. The only place where I believe that the banks need not change or should be very, very stringent is the security aspect, because that is something that you have to be very careful. But other than that, in most of the cases, I think there is a huge scope of improvement in terms of policies and processes.
I think a lot of premise of our conversation is really there is an aspect of innovation and mapping to the need out in the market space, right? Which a lot of fintechs are. In some cases, it's maybe a product of that single-minded pursuit of solving a problem. So maybe Akash, based on your experience, what has been that innovation been and your journey in that? And if you want to extrapolate that forward, what are the innovations that you would see coming out in the market?
Well, I think from a startup's perspective and from the market's perspective, there is a huge space to pivot. And normally you start off with a certain idea and you change yourself and you pivot. And that is what makes us agile and easy to be able to change that thought process. And I think the banks are pretty open to that thought process also. They are actually, so I wouldn't say in my experience we've had any bad experience with the bank. All banks are good. But some of them are easy to deal with, some are difficult, and I think it takes time and effort. But innovation is constant, and banks are open to understand as long as it makes sense. And of course, security remains a big aspect of it. And legacy systems again come back into action. But our experience in putting in new features or putting in new innovation to the market or asking banks to support it has always been good. We've never had an issue with that. And then there are things which they are close to, which maybe are very close to their own core business. So from our aspect, the more we get into it, the more disruptive it gets. Innovation is only leading it, and the banks are supporting it. So.
But maybe go deeper into that topic. So, in that space, because what you're trying to track is that core issue. How do we get merchants to start accepting digital payments with least friction? So probably what have your experiences been? And you have slightly taken, maybe in my worldview, a slightly divergent approach to it, which is fantastic. We will get to know, we'll have more solutions out in the market. Maybe it's not just one solution. So what has your individual experience been in terms of cracking that space through innovation?
Sure. So I'll first, in a line, I'll tell my UltraCash approach. Basically, we want to enable every merchant in this country to be able to accept payment without any upfront fee, no hardware, just a phone, and you should be able to accept it, right? So that's the thought process that we have. And the thought process stems from the fact that all banks put together, a lot of MPOS companies put together in the last 5 years, there've been an organic growth of a 15-20%. We are sitting at 1.1 million POS machines, which is minuscule, one of the worst in the world, right? And that's the reason why we have taken a completely diametric approach, saying, let's solve it in a big way. Even if we die solving it, so be it, but that's the approach. To achieve that, we need a lot of support from the bank's side, because even from a regulatory side, because if you leave apart top 8 to 10 cities when you go, right, some of the KYC processes, so there are huge hurdles there which needs to be overcome for it to become mass market. As an organization, that's the approach we are taking. We are going ahead, taking banks' help wherever required, taking regulatory help wherever required. But that's the primary approach that we are taking.
So it's a hybrid effort, you know, it's collaborative. Our system does everything and does take payment using nothing but a mobile phone, but we also built hardware which allows the merchant to be able to use other services within that. So if you go to a typical Kirana store, and if you're trying to digitize him or he needs to have inventory management. Inventory management needs barcode scanning. India has a big issue regarding people wanting receipt for everything or not really believing in the digital system. So it's a hybrid effort. I think the market is open to mobile and digital and getting everything happening digitally. But there is also the mindset which says, no, I want something physical. I want to touch and feel something. And I think from our perspective, we enable the merchant, depending on his size, either digitally or we give him software and hardware to run his business. And it has to be a collaborative effort. So the banks are part of that journey. And I don't think without the banks being included, it can be done. I mean, you cannot hit the 20, 30, 50 million numbers without the banks being involved.
In fact, it's such a huge market that a couple of companies can't crack it. It's humongous. And you need a lot of innovation coming in, a lot of people putting in their lives to change the way things are happening. So that's where I believe the future lies.
And we touched upon earlier the whole idea of some enabling infrastructure in place. So what's your view on something like UPI? Will that be one of the enabling factors, maybe across the panel?
Well, so, you know, we met a potential investor and they said to us, oh, you take digital wallets? Okay, UPI is coming, stop wasting your time with it. So from our perspective, UPI will change a lot of things. We hope it doesn't become like IMPS and just fails. But if the government puts the right effort behind it, it's a great way to move forward. But from a merchant's perspective, be it Ultra Cash, be it any of the digital wallets, be it credit card, he doesn't care. For him, he is open and he should be allowed to do what he thinks is best for him, which is basically to accept all forms of payments. And that's what we do. So, I don't know, UPI is one of them.
Ajit, how are you looking at UPI?
Yeah, I think UPI has tremendous potential in being able to remove the friction which is there in being able to transfer money from one person to the other. One of the things, and in the morning when I came in, there was a discussion which was happening around financial inclusion. And since I handled that part of the business as well, while we see UPI changing a lot for enabling payments, I think one particular piece which still needs to get solved is that ultimately somewhere a cash out needs to happen. You can't keep rotating the money electronically through various people. And therefore, I think that infrastructure, if kind of collaborates with the UPI infrastructure we create, then we have a win-win solution. Otherwise, it'll be small payments and it'll kind of remain at that level.
So we've been touching a lot on payment, maybe the panel as well, but finally one has to make money as well, right? In this case, the volumes are there, margins are razor thin, newer entrants and especially payment banks, and the competition is increasing. Remittance is becoming largely zero cost. Right. So how does anyone make money out of this? How do the existing banks make money out of it? Is it the conventional theory says value-added services, you move to lending and wealth and so on and so forth. What has that journey or thought process been? And even for the startups, so how do you at the end of the day make money out of this whole story?
Okay, for banks, we see margins in payments vanishing, and therefore payment as a business will become only an enabler. For us to get access to customers, whether they are merchants, which are being kind of given these machines or given an ability to accept payments or consumers. I think banks see money in the fact that from this digital footprint, if I can lend to them and therefore capture the majority of the wallet of that customer, I think that's where money is to be made. The others will just be enablers. That's our view.
We are firm believers that we have to provide huge value to the merchants. So you have to create an ecosystem where you connect the consumers with the merchants, and again, payment being an enabler. And that is how the business models will evolve. Of course, there's a direct cut that you can take on a transaction fee, as a transaction fee. So that's any which way is there. But when you're talking of a digital system, all pervasive, reaching all merchants and all consumers, the number of things that you can do to provide value-added services to that entire ecosystem is huge, and there's enough money to be made through that. So that's our thought process.
I think the MDR is a dying game. So that is something which, if you think you can make money from it, is that those days are almost over. The reality remains is that you have to focus on business tools. And whoever innovates and builds tools which are frictionless and which can actually help the retailer and touch his pain areas, that is where the market is. That's where, so it could be, you know, and whoever innovates the most or whoever is able to build that into a convenient solution is actually going to lead the way. We feel that anything to do with trying to take into the bank's percentages or any of that part, those things are not going to work. They're over.
When you were talking earlier, you mentioned, which I thought very interesting, and at that time we didn't have time to finish that loop, but the whole idea of MDR auctioning, right, which is a very interesting free market, a free merchant market, and this presumes that merchant acquisition has happened to a certain degree, right? Want to explain on top of it, and this time I'll allow other participants also to weigh in on that thought process, because it's quite disruptive in its own way.
We feel that the MDR space is controlled by the bank, because the bank has his machine at the merchant level, and the bank determines how much he wants to charge you as MDR. Is it 1% or is it 2%? And we feel going in the future, if there's a white label POS, which is enabled with all banks, something what ePesa does, it actually allows you to be able to build an MDR auctioning model and be able to go to a bank and say, either this merchant does, let's say, 1 lakh a day, and what MDR would you offer him on Visa, MasterCard, or RuPay? Or you would go to, as a consolidated white label provider, to a bank and say, I do 10 crores worth of transactions a day, and which bank would want to hit and own that transaction? And you could auction it off every day, every month, every year, depending on your focus. So banks owning merchants is actually counterproductive. That's what we feel. We feel moving forward, merchants have to be white label sitting on somebody's solution, and all the banks need to connect into that pipe. Like the way today we have Bharat Bill, we may have MDR backend, which everybody connects into, and then whoever wants to do whatever should decide. Now, it's a very disruptive thought process, and don't kill me for it, but that's how it is.
Ideally, just to add to that, that's where UPI can be a game changer, right? Because the merchants have been paying phenomenal amount of money for a payment processor, right, to the payment processor. So IMPS was a first step, which was phenomenal. And when we started off, we really thought that we would like to ride on IMPS. And we might be the only merchant app which allows payment through IMPS. We believe UPI is something which is a phenomenal step in that direction, where the MDRs will really get sloshed down, and the merchants won't have to pay for taking payments.
Harjeet?
No, as I said, I mean, while today in the credit card business, there is a huge amount of money which gets made purely because, both on the issuing side and the acquiring side, because of the existence of MDR. And I think the day is not far when we'll have to kind of rethink that model of how to make that business profitable. But that's a writing on the wall. And therefore other ways of being able to capture other wallets of the customer and therefore make money is what will have to happen, because this is given. I mean, it's a question of whether it happens in 6 months or in 2 years, but this is going to happen.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think it is disruptive, and it's already done in telecom world. So, when you just have minutes, and the telecom provider will do the wholesale sale of minutes. So here you're talking about transactions. So you're right, it's a writing on the wall. It'll probably happen maybe a year down the line.
One topic we didn't cover, maybe this is the last question, we'll go around this thing and we'll open it up to audiences. One of the inhibitors, again, which is a common one, which everyone keeps on talking about, is regulatory compliance, right? So probably what would be one top ask individually from you from a change in regulation perspective to facilitate further adoption of whether it is payment transactions or lending or wealth products, so on and so forth, anything which you think would be your ask from the regulator?
At least somewhere we'll have to really streamline the KYC process. If there's no point all the banks going individually, all the partners going individually.
Get a utility function, basically.
Yeah. So that's something that can really help in, especially on the merchant side. So that's something that we'll look at.
I think enabling digital and allowing digital signatures and allowing things to happen digitally, similar to KYC, but everything else, and that becoming legal is an hour of the day. Today you can't open a bank account if you don't physically sign on a piece of paper, and I think that would need to change for sure.
Away from the wet signature.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think regulations are changing. So the new central KYC, which has just got launched on 15th of July, I think is a step towards that, where one person does the KYC and therefore everybody else rides on that KYC. What needs to still happen is the zero touch. That touch piece, whether it's for a signature or it is for a face-to-face, that needs to go away because that is when the true power of digital will come in and scale will be possible. So I think that's something which we're still looking towards the regulator to kind of find a way out.
Right.
So I will talk here from a consumer point of view. With all this digitalization, I think there is still a lot of documentation and paperwork. So I would just echo it, and I say, see, from my point of view, we're looking at a simplified solution, faster, more transparent, and and obviously, as much less paper as possible and more digitalization. So right now it's more regulatory in nature, but I think going forward, as we've seen, some of these things will go.
All right, fantastic. I hope it was really fantastic interacting with all of you. I hope everyone took something away from this. I'm sure the panelists would be there post this session as well. If there are some questions we can take beyond that, over to you, ma'am.